And as you know, this information that you normally see in the classroom is being suppressed. So we are stronger than the 99%. I need for all of you to text, to tag, to share this video. Make sure that everybody knows that Dr. Will Tuttle is in the classroom. So I'm going to go ahead and start the share. Oh, I need to join Telegram, and we're going to start the recording right now. You're in for a treat. I was when I first heard about him and when I first met Dr. Will Tuttle. And so go ahead, it's time to open our minds. And the best way to open our minds is to dance. Here we go. So fasten your seatbelts after you're done dancing, because we're going to learn and grow together. Here we go. Time to dance.
The Lillian McDermott Show.
We love, we fear, bridges we burn, we make mistakes, then we live and learn. When life gets tough, and it seems like your best ain't good enough. If you're in need of hope, you know where I'll be right here, right here. And when you need a friend, you can count on me. I'll be right here, waiting for you.
This is the place you can always turn to when you need a friend. The Lillian McDermott Show. To reach out to Lillian, visit her on the web at whenyouneedafriend.com. Now let's all learn together. Here's Lillian McDermott.
Hello, my listening and viewing friend. It's so nice we can meet each other on the air on this beautiful, best day ever. For those of you who are tuning into the classroom for the first time, please know I've been waiting for you. This is a safe place where you can go to when you need a friend. It is my commitment to provide natural ways to heal, and it is my mission to make awareness, responsibility, and truth a part of our everyday life. And I hope you, my listening, as well as my viewing friend, will feel empowered to embrace a new truth and live the life of your dreams. Now, when somebody mentions a name to you, and then randomly somebody else mentions the same name to you, and again, and it keeps happening. And then you find yourself at an event that the person is there, Dr. Will Tuttle. Then you take note. It's like you hear it one time, guys, that look nice. Second time, I'm going to pay attention more. Third time, I'm really paying attention. And then when you book an event and they happen to be there, you know that the universe, God, is bringing us together for a reason. And once I heard about Dr. Will Tuttle, I was, very curious about his message. He's the author of the book, World Peace Diet, and it's a different way of looking at food, maybe differently than you've ever heard before. And I thought this is very interesting. It's not just about being vegan. It's not about, certain ideas that we may have about having a meatless diet or what we call animal protein, which I called animal products. It's more than that. It's what's behind that. And because nobody else wrote a book like this, Will Tuttle, PhD, who is a graduate of UC Berkeley and is an accomplished piano player. I mean, an artist, and amazing. I was listening to his music this morning, just feeling so touched by the emotion that pours out of him. And so while we were in line, ready to eat some beautiful vegan food in the Vegan Wagon event that we just recently did, I said, you just got to come on my show. You just come on my show. And here he is. And since it is our sole purpose in life to give and receive love and knowledge, I am so honored and grateful that Dr. Will Tuttle is here to do just that. Welcome to the classroom, Dr. Tuttle.
Thank you, Lily. I really appreciate the work you're doing, and thanks everyone for joining us in the class.
Yes. Well, I know that people are going to be in for a treat. And I was even asking you if you were available next year so that you can share this life-changing information. So before we get started, share a little bit about your background and your journey and what led you to the path that you're taking today.
Sure. Great. Yeah. So I was born and raised back in the 1950s in Concord, Massachusetts, in a family that ate the usual meals, lots of meat, dairy products, and eggs, and I never questioned it. I didn't have any way to question it, really. There was nobody that was not doing that. I remember when I was about 7 years old, I said to my mother, "Mom, the kind of food we're eating, is this what everybody eats?" And she said, "Yeah, this is pretty much everybody in the whole world. Yeah, pretty much everybody eats like us, pretty much the same." And then she left and she came back and she said, "Well, I'm sorry, I forgot. There are some people who don't eat the way we do. They're called vegetarians." And I never heard that word in my life. And so I was at that age when I liked learning new words, especially if they were kind of long, like vegetarian. So I said, "What's a vegetarian?" And my mother thought for a moment and she just said, "Don't worry about it. You're never going to meet one. I don't know where they get their protein." And so I had this image of these vegetarians as really pathetic people who I was so glad I wasn't one, because they were probably dragging themselves through the dirt, begging for protein. And that was the end of it. My mother was right. I never heard another word about it again. But I found out as time went on that there actually are vegetarians. I remember when I went away to college in the early 1970s in Maine, that I heard there were some vegetarians on campus, but I never actually met one. And but during that time, I started really questioning a lot of the underlying narratives in our society. It was during the Vietnam War era. I started questioning the war and many other things. And I started also exploring spirituality for the first time. I was born in Concord, so I discovered Thoreau, Walden Pond, and Emerson, and through them, Taoist and Buddhist and Hindu teachings. I started meditating and doing yoga, and also reading the Bible and just all kinds of spirituality, whatever I could get. And I read one book called Cosmic Consciousness, written back in the 1890s, that really affected me. And the basic idea was that most people only attain what the author referred to as self-consciousness, where we're mainly concerned about ourselves and maybe those close to us, but that some rare people had attained what he called cosmic consciousness, which is, in a sense, like a cosmic or quantum leap to a higher level of awareness. People like Jesus and the Buddha and other great sages and saints and prophets, and both men and women over the centuries. And he basically said that it is the destiny of all human beings to attain this higher state of consciousness. And I thought that's really the purpose. I had that feeling that we're not here merely to accumulate wealth and power and experiences, but we're here to awaken to a higher level of awareness and to heal not only our own delusion, but also to help others. And so I remember talking to my younger brother, Ed, about this, and to my delight, he agreed. And so we left home. Right after college in 1975, I walked down the driveway with my brother, and we left home, and our intention was to walk all the way to California. And we walked for many months. We got as far as Buffalo, New York, after I guess about a month, and then we headed south because it was getting cold. It was October, and we actually walked all the way to Alabama. And on the way down through upstate New York and Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Kentucky, into Tennessee, we were surviving. We had no money, and we were living a lot, really. More and more, we were becoming vegetarians because it was autumn, and there were lots of zucchinis and apples and things that we could somehow get a hold of. And we eventually ended up at a community that was the largest hippie commune in the world back in 1975. It was called The Farm. And the farm was about almost 1,000 people, and they were mainly from California. And so we felt like we had found California in Tennessee, in a sense, these people, and they were all vegetarians. They said, "We're vegetarians," and this was the first real in-depth experience I'd ever had with vegetarians. And they were actually vegans, what we would say today, vegans, but no one knew the word vegan in 1975. It was an unknown word, but they didn't eat any meat or dairy or eggs. They even stayed away from leather if they could. So they were actually living a life of compassion for animals. And I asked them why they were doing it, and they said the main reason was because most of the food we're growing, instead of feeding it to people who are hungry, we're feeding it to animals who waste 80 or 90% of it as sewage and nitrous oxide and methane and so forth. And so to create peace on Earth, they were eating lower on the food chain so there'd be enough for everyone to eat. And then they also told me about the routine abuse and mutilation and harm that is inflicted on literally millions of animals every day for food. And that kind of pulled the curtain back as well on that violence. And so that was it. From that day and back in 1975, I have never eaten any animal flesh of any kind. I just decided that was it. And it was really because of this community, the farm. And I realized that that's the only reason I or anyone eats animal foods is because of the communities we're raised in. That's the only reason. There's no other reason. We're doing it because we're following orders. I was following orders that were basically imposed upon me from the time I was a little infant by very loving and well-meaning people, my mother, my father, my friends and neighbors and relatives, my teacher, all my teachers, the minister at the church, of course, the media. And so I just did what I was told. And food is the most powerful teaching that we get across all species. I remember watching some ducks in Switzerland, and I realized that was it. The mother was teaching the little babies, eat this, don't eat that. So we learn that at a very deep level, and we learn don't question that. So it's really almost a miracle, I think, that anyone is able to question eating animal foods, but we do it like I did because I realized that it's devastating to our health and to animals and to ecosystems and to hungry people, really on many levels. It's not necessary. And so that's the underlying message really of the World Peace Diet, is that all of us as human beings have been given this wonderful gift of a physical body that does not require any animals to suffer or be abused in order to get all the nutrients that we need to thrive and to celebrate our lives on this beautiful earth. The problem is we're just born into a culture where that gift is taken away and we're compelled to eat animal foods, and that we don't realize it, but that is the spinning fury at the core of our society that's generating virtually all the problems that we're having. Any problem that you read about in the newspaper or hear about on TV or the radio, you trace it back. It has its roots in animal agriculture, and the violence towards animals creates not only environmental devastation and cultural devastation and physical disease, but it creates the inner landscape of our own consciousness that makes these problems inevitable. So we really are called, all of us, to understand the consequences of eating the way we're taught to eat. And the good news is, besides having a critique, we have this wonderful alternative, which is we can eat plant-based foods that are delicious and nutritious and that really supply everything we need on a fraction of the land, on a fraction of the water, on a fraction of the pollution and petroleum and so forth. And we can be part of the solution to the problems rather than just being part of the problem here.
Yeah, and that is the name of the event that I did this weekend. I am the solution. The I am is the God in us, and the solution is an acronym that requires us to take action. It's the action that we are called to take so that we can be part of the solution. As I listen to your story, and as I listen to your mission and your vision and the connections that you've made, let's just look at veganism, which is something that people say, what is it? 2%, they say 2% of the population is vegan. But here's what's and I don't want to get distracted on this question alone, because I do want to talk about the other side of veganism or this world peace diet. When you think about veganism, the vegan community, the food industry, the same industry that causes us to believe that the only way you get protein is through animal products, is now doing this destroying the vegan products by making it a standard American vegan product, and there's like nothing in there that is healthy. It's devoid of nutrients. And so what do you say about that? I mean, you're not talking about that kind of veganism, right?
I thank you so much, Lily, that's kind of a hard question for a lot of vegans, but I love it because I feel the same way you do. To me, A healthy vegan diet is 100% plant-based, but it should also be organic and whole foods. So we're eating vegetables and fruits and grains and nuts and seeds and whole foods, and we put them together. As soon as I buy a product that's made in a factory, to me, that a lot of the new vegan foods are plant-based in the sense that they come from a plant. You know, they come from a factory. And so they're full of genetically engineered ingredients. They're full of chemicals and preservatives and artificial flavorings, artificial colorings. And this is not healthy. And the worst thing really is to have people who are waking up, actually starting to wake up, and then give them, instead of encouraging them to eat healthy vegetables and grains and fruits and so forth that we can buy at the store or buy at the farmer's market and that we can grow ourselves in our gardens, to buy foods that come out of a factory that are unhealthy. And so people are moving away from eating unhealthy meat, dairy, and eggs, and you have them moving into eating unhealthy so-called plant-based foods, and the people get sick, and they go, well, I tried going vegan and I didn't feel good and I gained 5 pounds or whatever. I'm going to go back to eating meat and dairy. And it really destroys the whole vegan movement. I think it's, in a way, it's almost designed to do that. I think the movement is being infiltrated by big pharma in many ways. I think, big pharma, I've realized, I've been a vegan activist now for over 40 years. And I think one of the things I've discovered is that the pharmaceutical industry is the biggest enemy of the vegan movement, more even than the meat industry or the dairy industry, because the meat and dairy industries, they're learning. They're saying, well, people have to eat. So they say, we'll make plant-based meat, plant-based dairy. They can buy and make those kinds of products. But the pharmaceutical industry, they need a reliable flood of sick people. And one of the main ways that is achieved is by meat, dairy, and egg consumption, which concentrate PCBs and dioxins and heavy metals and pesticide, herbicide, and fungicide residues in the animal flesh and dairy products. And eggs are so unhealthy, they cause so much disease. And so the greatest nightmare really of the pharmaceutical industry is people like me who have gone a whole organic plant-based diet, and I have not been to a pharmacy to get any kind of product at all, including aspirin or Tylenol or whatever is in there in 50 years. I haven't been to a pharmacy in 50 years, since the early 1970s. So it's possible. I think if we are proactive in taking responsibility for our health and living as good citizens, being kind and compassionate to animals, to hungry people, to ecosystems, and to the systems in our body, to our digestive system and to our brain and to our liver and so forth, then we can thrive and celebrate our lives on this beautiful earth. And there's nothing really to stop us. The problem is the toxic chemicals, which concentrate in animal-based foods and also, of course, in water and air. So we have to be mindful of the way we're living. But the more we can take responsibility for our health and question these narratives and really stay away. I mean, if somebody is eating meat and they want to have for a few weeks, maybe have some plant-based so-called fake cheese and chicken and burgers, okay, but get through that stage fast and get right into whole foods, because whole foods are where health is. They're not in these packaged products, really.
Well, we know that these food manufacturers, they hijack the brain and spend billions of dollars of making sure that the flavors of sweet and savory and all these will hook you and make you an addict. And so we understand, and we talk about this in the classroom, and I'm not trying to push veganism on anybody, but I'm trying to get people to understand that there's another side to health and wellness. And so the book is called The World Peace Diet: Eating for Spiritual Health and Social Harmony. And I know that the moment you say to someone, I'm whole food plant-based, and I can understand why the whole food plant-based movement went away from the vegan movement, because of the same reason that I'm talking about. I went to a veg fest and I was able to eat something that looked like a shrimp but was made from plant-based. It was plant-based, but it looked like a shrimp. And I was like, at the time, I was thrilled. It tasted just like shrimp. What's in this? And when I started looking into what's in this, then I realized anything that could have given me any nutrition whatsoever was dead, was completely processed and taken out of context, and no longer is that my focus anymore. So whole food plant-based is so important. And but let's talk about the fundamental values. What are some of the fundamental values of the world peace diet, so that people can understand that there is another side, that there is life in the food that we eat, whether it's a plant-based or an animal. There is life, and how are those lives treated?
Wow, yeah, that's really important. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, the basic idea, of course, whole food plant-based is fantastic because it really maximizes the health of our physical body, which is a very compassionate thing to do. If we're healthy, then we're being compassionate to people around us. If I'm not healthy myself, there's all kinds of problems that I'm going to be causing to the people in my lives, and then I'm probably going to have some kind of chemical drugs, and those chemical drugs, after I swallow them, they don't just disappear, they go through. And that's one of the major problems we have now. There's hundreds and hundreds of different pharmaceutical residues in the water and ending up in the soil and making birds and fish and other animals sick and harming them. So being healthy is a great thing. But people who are vegan, the motivation for vegan is compassion for animals and for wildlife and so forth. So to me, we need both of those together. And that's where the spirituality and social harmony come in, because from my point of view, spirituality and veganism are basically the same exact thing. What is spirituality? Spirituality is not some exotic thing, and it's not something that's only contained in religion. In many ways, religion and spirituality are a little different. The thing about spirituality is that it's honesty, it's freedom and truth. It's understanding the interconnectedness of all life and realizing that what we are is not merely matter. We're not merely a material thing that was born and died. And the same is true of all the animals too. They're not matter that was born and will die. So once we understand that on a deeper level, we begin to have a sense of respect and kindness for ourselves and for other living beings, because we realize that what we are is actually infinite and eternal consciousness that was never born and will never die, and we're expressing through a physical vehicle. So that understanding is very important, and I think, to me, it's really one of the foundations for what we call veganism. It's the core of every world religion. The old Sanskrit word is ahimsa, which is translated as non-harmfulness. That as soon as we harm others for our own benefit, we're sowing the seeds of our own misery and our own disease, because whatever we sow, we're going to reap. If we're going to put out into the universe the infinite web of relations, deception and manipulation and mutilation and harm and so forth to other beings, sooner or later that's going to boomerang back on us in this lifetime or the next. I mean, we have to understand that. So the best way we can assure that we will be happy and healthy and free is to just do the best we can to help others to be happy, healthy, and free. And as we do that, we create a more harmonious society, we create more joy and freedom and abundance for everyone. But the others that we're talking about are not just human beings. They're also animals. Anyone who has a companion animal, like a dog or a cat, is very aware that there's someone in there behind those eyes. If you have a companion like a dog, that there's someone there, and she would not like to be stuck in a closet and have the door closed and be forced to live in her own excrement and so forth and sold by the pound. But that's what we do to billions of animals every day, and we act like it doesn't matter. We don't care about them. We don't care about these cows and chickens and pigs and turkeys and other animals and fishes. But their suffering matters to them as much as my suffering matters to me. Their interests matter to them as much as my interests matter to me. And so we are called more than anything now to evolve ethically and emotionally and spiritually to respect other living beings. But we're raised in a society where we're taught from infancy not to do that. So that means we have to be essentially willing to be different, to leave the tribal mentality and to actually reconnect with the two qualities that we have. Number one, rationality, and number two, empathy. If we're just rational, it makes no rational sense to grow most of the food and feed it to animals and waste the nutrients and pollute the water and create all kinds of environmental devastation and disease for ourselves. It's anti-rational. If we have any empathy at all, we would never want to slaughter all these animals and cause indigenous people to lose their habitat and cause future generations to inherit a world of suffering and disease and pollution. Our empathy would never allow that. So on either level, either if we're rational or we're empathetic, we will go vegan, we'll go whole food plant-based. But of course, the problem is we have tribalism, which is basically loyalty to my group and not wanting to be different from others. And that trumps very often both empathy and rationality. So this is really a calling, a spiritual calling more than anything, but also a calling from our own true nature of wisdom and rationality as well.
It's, when I hear you talk about animals, well, first of all, there's a couple of things I want to follow up. My next question for you that I had, this is organic, but sometimes I write questions down that I really want to ask. And I heard you say, we reap what you sow. You reap what you sow, but a lot of people don't understand that what are we reaping? What are the consequences of eating animal products to the point where, Dr. Joel Furman, I don't know if you know who he is, but he comes on since 2015, he's been a wonderful teacher in the classroom. The goal is to get people more, focused on whole food plant-based, but if they cannot leave their animal products behind, you can have like a certain amount, like a small amount, to if they choose that. So at least it'll get them pointing towards the whole food plant-based movement. And so with that in mind, the first thing is, what are the consequences that people are experiencing today because of the abundance of animal products? And the second thing that just gets to me every time that doesn't make the news, you always say this, doesn't make the news, is the number of animals that are slaughtered each year. So can you address those two issues?
Right. Yeah. Well, the second one, the number of animals that we human beings are slaughtering is so big, we can't, the mind boggles, we can't imagine it. It's, especially when we include marine animals that like fish. It's 75 billion land animals every year, which again, is such a huge number. We have about 7 billion human beings, 7.8 billion human beings. We're slaughtering 75 billion animals every year for food, land animals. But when we get it to marine animals, it gets up to around 3 trillion animals. And that's such a huge number. If we put all these fish, from fin to tail, to nose, all the way, it would make a line all the way to the moon. I mean, it's a huge amount of animals that are being killed. In the United States alone, every day we're killing millions of animals. Actually, probably 1 billion animals a day. If we include fish, we're probably killing a good billion animals every single day in the United States for food. And so this is something that's really not just a side project that we're engaged in. This is the biggest thing we're doing. If someone came from outer space and they looked around here and they radioed back up to the mothership, what are they doing down on Earth? The obvious thing would be they're killing billions of animals every day, just slaughtering. That's what they're doing. That's the main thing we do. But we don't think of anything of it. It's kind of hidden from us. It's purposefully hidden in these. And we lived in an RV for 17 years, traveling around North America. So I've seen the vast acreage, millions upon millions of acres of land that's been enslaved to grow genetically engineered corn and soy and alfalfa and other feed grains. It's not for us. It's for all these animals. You don't see them. They're stuck away in these stinking sheds by the thousands usually, or tens of thousands. And they're only taken out once at the end where they're taken to be killed, and then it ends up as plastic wrapped flesh somewhere, or as dairy products or eggs. But the amount of environmental devastation and suffering and misery, and the fact that the workers who have to do this have the highest rates of suicide and drug addiction, alcoholism, and spousal abuse than any other workers, and injuries. I mean, we're sowing seeds of trauma on every level, to animals, to wildlife, to indigenous people, to slaughterhouse workers, to hungry people, and to future generations. And so that's the boomerang, right? So that's what that was the first part of your question. So how does it boomerang back?
I want to add one more thing. You're talking about these animals that are being killed, but you also talk about that, you know, the ones that are not killed are being raped and castrated and brutally, you know, treated horribly.
Well, that's the thing. Before they're killed, I mean, especially dairy cows or pigs, the female. I mean, it's mainly abuse of females. Females are the ones that really suffer most horrifically from the point of view of being abused, because they have to be impregnated over and over again, and their babies stolen on rape racks, and hyper confined. So there's tremendous. There's probably more suffering in a piece of cheese than in any piece of meat, just in terms of sheer suffering of the cows and their babies that are killed because they're killed. I mean, it's really it's heartless. It's so heartless. When I lived in that RV, we would park sometimes near dairy operations, and I would hear at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I could hear the cows bellowing because their babies had been stolen again. And it's heartbreaking to them. And then they're horribly abused, beaten and stabbed and everything else. There's undercover footage of large-scale operations and undercover footage of little small backyard operations, and they always show horrific mutilations and violence and abuse of these animals, because the animals don't do what you want them to do, and your job is to just get it done. And the workers, it brings out the worst in the workers. They get more and more brutal as time goes on. And so that's one of the main reasons, I think, from a spiritual point of view, to never eat animal foods. Because when I do that, like in the New Testament, Paul says, we shouldn't cause our brother to stumble. If I'm going to take out my wallet and pay for fish or cheese or meat of any kind, I'm causing someone somewhere to have a job where they do nothing but kill animals, and to rape them and to abuse them. And these workers, like I say, they suffer terribly, and the people around them suffer. So it's nothing but suffering, and it's all unnecessary. I mean, it's completely unnecessary. We can thrive like we do. Like we've planted 70 fruit and nut trees on the little half-acre piece of land, a quarter acre really, that we have in Northern California, and we get a huge amount of food from that small amount of land. So this is the thing to understand. But just to briefly respond to your earlier point, the way it boomerangs back is very ironic. For example, we sow the seeds of obesity, of osteoporosis, of cancer in all these animals. These animals have terrible obesity. I mean, they're sold by the pound, so they're deliberately made obese. The chickens and pigs and cows and turkeys that we're eating are obese. There's special feeding techniques and breeding techniques and lighting techniques and everything, with one goal: to make them fat as fast as possible, as quickly as possible. And then so we sow those seeds, and we have an obesity epidemic that we can't stop. It's just getting worse every single year. And the same thing with osteoporosis. These animals are hyper confined. Their bones are collapsing. They're breaking. We steal so much milk and eggs from them, for example, that all the minerals are taken out. So their bones are breaking all the time. That's well known. And we get an osteoporosis epidemic. We force cancer on them. We get a cancer epidemic. We break down their families, and we find sociologists saying the worst problems we're having are the breakdown of families, family structures. We force them to live in polluted environments, and we find ourselves increasingly living in a polluted environment. Like whatever we put put them in conflict. We steal their purposes, and we find more and more people thinking, "Gosh, I don't have a purpose." All these things. So whatever we do to these animals, we end up experiencing it ourselves in our social relations, in our personal relations. We make them into just a helpless victim in many ways of a heartless economic system. And we have more and more people saying, "Oh, I feel like a helpless victim in a heartless economic system, a governmental system." I've been warning for decades. I've been saying, if we're going to insist on force medicating animals, on microchipping and tracking those animals, what makes us think we're not going to have the same thing happening to us? And lo and behold, we can see the rolling out of these very same procedures happening. So if we want freedom and justice and sovereignty for ourselves, we can have it, but not if we're going to steal it from other living beings. If we steal it from them, we will lose it. And this has to be understood by everyone very clearly, because we're in challenging times that require us to question the official narratives in our society if we're going to be able to pass on a society of freedom and justice and equality to our children, because animal agriculture destroys all of those qualities in our society and in ourselves. It brings out the worst in us. It's actually a very satanic practice that we have been told is necessary and normal, but it's not at all. It's completely unnecessary and completely abnormal for us as humans.
Well, you know, as I think and I hear you speak, and as I am just sitting with what you're saying and learning more and more from you, and for the first time thinking, who determines what animals we eat, which ones we don't eat? Because no one would ever do this to their dog. No one would think, I mean, as a matter of fact, there are groups that protect dogs and animals because they've been tortured or something has happened to them. I mean, why would there not be any groups? Why would we think that no one should protect the cows or no one should protect the pigs? And so how did we determine what could be eaten and what couldn't be eaten?
Yeah, well, that's culturally determined, and it goes back into antiquity. It goes back 10,000 years. The World Peace Diet, the book I wrote that was a worldwide bestseller back in 2010, I think one of the reasons it had such a huge impact, and it's been translated into 18 languages by volunteers, and we've traveled all over the world to talk about this, is because it actually shows the story, how it started 10,000 years ago when we started to own wild sheep and then wild goats, and about 2,000 years later, wild cows in what is today Iraq, and then later then pigs and then chickens, and how that led to the arising for the very first time on planet Earth of a wealthy elite class who then started dominating their society. And then they created two new institutions that had never been on Earth before. One, it was Gavia, the oldest word in the world for war. It means the desire for more cows. So war was introduced, and out of war came slavery. We still have war and we still have slavery because we're still warring against nature and animals, and we're still enslaving them. So we have human war and we have human slavery, and the domination of the feminine, and the forcing of boys to become hard and tough and disconnected from their natural tenderness and mercy. All of this is required if you're going to eat animal-based foods. So when we're doing that, we have to understand that this is the system that we're born into, and we've chosen these particular animals. But if we go to another place, for example, if I say to someone here, gosh, could you ever give up eating a steak? And they say, no, I love my steak. I'm not going to give that up. And if I say to them, well, could you give up eating a dog? Oh, I would never eat a dog. Are you crazy? What do you think I am? Some kind of insane, crazy person? No. But then like when I was a Zen Buddhist monk in Korea, I went to the markets and I talked to people and I saw what was going on. And if I said to someone, could you ever give up eating dog? They go, no, dog soup is so delicious. I would never give it up. It's fantastic. Would you consider eating a cow? A cow? Are you some kind of barbarian? I would never eat a cow. They're beautiful, noble animals. Oh, that's insane to think you would eat a cow. So it's just we're just programmed. We're all programmed by our society, and we have to understand that and not just repeat the programming, but question the program.
And that's what you're doing. That's what we're doing today. We are questioning the programming. That's what I do in every single class that we put together. It is about questioning the program. Don't believe a word that we're saying is what I say to you. Don't believe it. Research it. This is not just Dr. Will Tuttle's truth or my truth or somebody else who believes the same way. This is our ownership. And the other word in the classroom is responsibility, but it's not the responsibility word that leads to shame, blame, fault, or duty. It's responsibility, ownership, and freedom. And that's the kind of responsibility that we talk to. So go to whenyouneedafriend.com, please become a subscriber. Share this video with your friends and start a conversation, because this is something that I don't think I've ever had this kind of conversation in the classroom before. I believe that for those of you who love animals, for those of you who want to be healthy and you don't understand why you feel a certain way, it could be the energy of the animals that we're eating. And so I just want you guys to just be curious, not critical, just sit with it. And so I want to encourage you to go to whenyouneedafriend.com. If you are a subscriber already, you have all of Dr. Will Tuttle's information from the blog that I sent out. But please not just subscribe to the classroom. You can also like and follow me on all social media. And you can also share this video with your friends. Please let them know that we are learning about ownership, becoming our own MD, our own medical detectives, so that we can live the life that we want. I want to encourage you also to go to our sponsors page. Please support our sponsors the way they're supporting the classroom, and then go to the Shop Now bag, where every single product there is Lilly approved, it's synthetic free, and that it's, you know, healthy for you. And most of them have coupon codes that will get you a discount. And last but not least, you can become an enrolled student in the classroom. So whether it's $1 or $1,000 a month, or a one-time donation of your time, your talent, your treasure, whatever you can give to help grow the classroom is greatly appreciated. So today we have Dr. Will Tuttle, who several people told me about him. And by the third time I paid attention, I was paying attention. Like I'm going to look into him. I'm going to research it. What is he talking about? Gosh, I've never really heard about this, but it wasn't until I was at the same event with Vegan Wagon. We went on, I know you saw some of those pictures, that we went on a cruise, a 3-hour cruise in West Palm Beach. It was an amazing experience. And who was there? Dr. Will Tuttle, sharing his experience. And while we were in line together, I said, I really need to get you in the program. This is divine that I am here with you today. So I want you to make that same kind of divine appointment. Go to Dr. Tuttle's website. You can go to willtuttle.com, or you can go to worldpeacediet.com. Check out all the events. As you know, this is heard worldwide, so we don't know when he's going to be in your area. So go to his website, check out his events, purchase his book, do whatever you can, listen to his music. It's just so beautiful. So do whatever you can to start taking that and say, you know what? Why do I want violence in my life? And it starts with a food that we could be eating. So Dr. Tuttle, thank you so much for coming into the classroom today and sharing the research, your lifestyle, and how you have changed. How do you keep from being angry? Because I know that anger can ruin every cell of our body. 5 minutes of anger can cause our immune system to lower 6 to 8 hours, depending on your health. You know, how do you keep yourself centered and grounded and focus on sharing this information? Because earlier you said that there's a lot of loyalty to the lifestyle, and I'm sure that you've had a lot of arrows thrown at you. How do you stay focused and grounded and continue this message of truth?
Well, you know, what we're talking about is love. That's all it is. And we're talking about love in the true sense, which is caring for others. Mm-hmm. And there's no downside to that. There's never a downside to being kind and loving and benevolent in the way we live our lives. It always comes back, this life or the next. So I understand that, you know, we've all been wounded, and when people are wounded, then sometimes they strike back because they're hurt. And if someone is wounded, there's no point in yelling at them or criticizing them. When someone is hurt, then we don't criticize them. We try to be loving and help them. So I think for me, the whole thing is very much interconnected with my spiritual path. I was a Zen Buddhist monk in Korea back in the 1980s. I lived in a monastery, and I spent thousands and thousands of hours just sitting in meditation in silence. I took a vow of silence for 90 days at one point, and many other things. And so I think doing inner work is really important. And once we get to understand ourselves, and like I said earlier, understand that what I am is not this body. What I am is not these thoughts and feelings and emotions and memories and the accumulation that of an image that I'm trying to project to the world. What I am is never born and will never die. It's the infinite, eternal consciousness that we share, essentially. I mean, there's one life living through all of us. So from that foundation, we can look out at the world with love. And when I'm at the post office, I'm just sending love to people, or whatever it is. Because why else are we here? We're only on this earth for a few short decades. I mean, it goes by very quickly. I remember hearing the oldest living woman, this Japanese woman. She was 117 years old. And they said, "What's it like now you're the oldest person on earth?" And she said, "All I can say is, it sure went by awfully fast. It doesn't seem very long." You know, it's true. I mean, I'm already in my 70th year. I mean, I can hardly believe it. And so the whole idea is that our life is precious, and there's no point in getting angry about anything, because if someone is angry, if I'm angry at someone, it's because I don't understand them. They've been wounded, and I'm afraid of something, but there's nothing to fear. We're here to spread love, and it's not just to humans, but to all living beings. So I think the whole idea is to root out the fear that comes from feeling that we're separate from the world, because we're not. We're not separate from the world. The world is arising in our own consciousness, actually. We're not separate from it. And when I was in Korea as a Zen monk, I realized I was in a community that had been practicing veganism since the 1200s, for like 750 years. There was no meat, no dairy, no eggs, no wool, no silk, no leather, no killing insects. I mean, the whole idea was to cultivate ahimsa, cultivate kindness and compassion for all expressions of life. When you're meditating from 3 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night every day, we start getting more sensitive to our thoughts and our feelings, and we begin to realize that anytime I'm harming others, I'm just harming myself. And it's illogical. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's laughable. It's like, why would I just put my hand on a hot burner on a stove? That's what I'm doing. I mean, it doesn't take a lot of brains or compassion not to do that, to just avoid putting my hand on a hot burner. If I criticize someone or see someone as wrong, I'm just putting my hand on a hot burner, and I'm just causing them suffering. It's ridiculous. It's like we've been given this beautiful instrument. I play the piano, so I practiced every day as a kid, and so with time music comes pouring through me. But I could never do that if I hadn't practiced every day to develop the capacity. And what I realized is we've all been given a beautiful instrument, our own mind, but we're not taught how to use it. We're taught just the opposite. It would be like my father and mother gave me a piano and then said, "Okay, now here's a hammer, just bang on it every day and just break the keys and pour drinks into it." That's how we treat our own mind. We treat our mind like we criticize ourselves, we criticize others, we judge, we blame. We're in the past, we're in the future. We're not trained, we're not taught anything about attention, about being present, about opening to the beauty of the moment, about listening, about witnessing and being aware, about watching our breathing, about relaxing and just being here and not trying to attain something. We're not taught that. So I understand. It's like if I was taught to just bang on the piano, I'd make a lot of noise. It would be, you wouldn't want to hear it. That's what we do with our minds. We make a bunch of noise with each other. I mean, it's not our fault. We live in a society of animal agriculture. When you have animal agriculture, you don't want to think about your food. Food is the most intimate connection we have with nature and with our society. If we're gonna just get numb around food, we're gonna reduce our intelligence, reduce our empathy, reduce everything, and unfortunately become robotic in our behavior. So again, it's not our fault. We've been wounded from birth by being forced to be living in a society that's selling billions of animals by the pound, living beings by the pound. We're living in that society. A society like that has to have a very low level of awareness, has to be unconscious. We were raised in an extremely, probably the most unconscious society maybe in history. So it's about raising our awareness again, raising consciousness and becoming aware of what we're actually doing. I have this physical body. It's the most precious thing, right? I mean, this is my vehicle for experience. Why would I ever build this temple with bricks of toxicity and violence and terror that I don't even want to look at? If I say to someone, would you like to know how your bacon was made and where it came from? No, I want to enjoy my bacon. Don't tell me. I mean, that kind of unconsciousness, we're just bringing in violence and fear and toxicity and expecting that by some miracle, we're going to be healthy and free and radiant. But we can be if we actually are congruent in our lives, if we're in alignment, if we allow our actions and words to be in alignment, then we're in harmony. But when you have people, all of us are trained to be out of alignment and to be not congruent. So we're saying one thing, oh, I'm kind and loving, but I just like having a good burger. Really? Look, we have to take responsibility for the consequences of our actions and how we treat other living beings. And when we do that, we find joy just pouring through us. We wake up in the morning and we just give thanks for another day to be part of the solution to the problems here, to just live and grow and contribute as best we can. And we're not worried about how it's going to turn out. It's going to turn out as just this moment right now, which is always the perfect unfoldment of consciousness as we are right now. And as we live that's the best way we can help other people, is living our own life authentically, taking responsibility for our own health and responsibility for the quality of our relationships and the quality of our life. And like you said so beautifully, Lily, taking responsibility means having the ability to respond, responding with our capacity in a way that we're giving something positive. I cannot control the outer world, but I can always control how I respond to it. And by bringing the best response that we possibly can, then we build a world of kindness for our children and our grandchildren, and we can all do that. And it's essential that we do the best we can to do that, I think. So
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love your message, and you're making me think beyond what I've felt. I was raw vegan for 3 years a while ago. And after that, it didn't support me anymore. It didn't support me because I started feeling weak. It just wasn't supporting me. And there's a lot of judgment out there that being a vegan, that vegan get dementia, they get this, they get that. But I'm wondering, because everything is energy. Everything is energy. And if we're eating these animal products that have been tortured, that energy is going to transfer. That's what you say, the reap what you sow. That energy transfers to our body. And even if we don't want to know how the bacon is being made, the body knows.
Right.
The body knows.
Body knows, and we know too, actually.
Yeah, we do. So we're just lying. We've been taught to ignore our intuition. We've given our intuition, which is part of what I gave a talk at the I Am the Solution workshop, Natural Health Summit. When we did this, I was talking about energy and frequency and all the differences, and that we know, even if we're not told, we know, but we have been taught to give away our intuition and trust the white coats, the government, everybody else but our intuition, the voice of God, the I am in us. We've been taught to ignore. And I know we have 2 minutes left, and I want to continue this conversation. But, real quick, can you give us some steps for someone who's hearing you today and go, I really want to take this step and embrace less animals, products, dying because of my consumption? What would you say to them?
Well, you said it perfectly. Yeah, connect with our intuition and question the official narratives in our society, and then just move toward a whole food, plant-based way of eating, and do that along with taking some time to just be comfortable with our own mind. Take 10 minutes a day to just listen, internally meditate. And I think when we put those two things together, we'll find our meditation will go deeper when we're not eating animal foods, and we'll find that as our meditation goes deeper, we won't even want to. I mean, we'll feel the energy, like you say, of what we're doing. So I would suggest maybe take one meal, maybe first make all the breakfasts plant-based, then the lunches plant-based, and then the dinners, and you'll get there. I mean, the food is delicious. We're already eating a lot of plant-based foods. I mean, eating fruits and vegetables, and you can just grains, pastas, potatoes, sweet potatoes, just make delicious food and learn, and we can create a beautiful world together.
Well, I tell you what, I want to do more stuff with you, Dr. Will Tuttle. I think that many of us need to hear this message. We need to hear this message so that we can take ownership of the way we're feeling, spirit, mind, and body. And it starts with our food. Food is a powerful weapon, is a powerful tool. The fork is a powerful tool. It can heal every cell in your body, or it can ruin every cell in your body. So a weapon of mass destruction. So thank you so much, Dr. Will Tuttle, for being in the classroom. I'm looking forward to our next conversation.
Thank you, Lily. Thank you.
And please remember, we'll be right here waiting for you worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. This is Lillian McDermott and Dr. Will Tuttle, wishing you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. Make it the best day ever. Good job. Good job. That's the best ever. Here we go.
The opinions and advice expressed on the Lillian McDermott radio show are intended for the individual callers and guests on the program and are presented to our wider audience solely for general educational purposes. Please act responsibly and consult personally with your own medical, psychological, or nutritional expert before taking any steps to improve your life.
Thank you so much. For those of you, I mean, we didn't do any Q&A today, and we don't have we don't have a teacher's pet corner. But I just want to say before we go, Dr. Tuttle, what an honor it's been to be in your presence, to be able to learn about you, to be able to be there, and to be able to bring you to a worldwide audience, because I know that you already have that. You don't need me for that, but these are more people that I hope that all of you that are listening and watch this, that you will just sit with what you heard. Any final words before we go?
Thank you again, Lillian. You're doing great work, and thanks everyone for listening, and just do the best each one of us to do the best we can. And I think just underlining what you were saying, it's really this intuition, this inner wisdom, letting that guide us, and not listen to these voices that are really coming from a place of deception. We're being deceived on many levels. There's so much deception right now in the world, and the only way forward for us is to develop the capacity of discriminating awareness, our inner wisdom, so we can tell the difference between what is a deception. It may be a 10,000-year-old deception, or it may be a brand new deception, but to find our way through these deceptions and together to radiate the truth. Each one of us, when we find the truth, we'll find that truth creates beauty and healing, and like you say, abundance, joy, and freedom. You know that that's what it is, and because we are interconnected. So the more each one of us is authentic in our spiritual quest, the more we make it easier for everyone else, because we're naturally helping them by being an example of that. I can't change anyone else. I can just change myself. But by doing that, that's the best way we can actually help others to make positive changes.
Well, I absolutely loved our time together. And I know that all of you who are watching too, please share this video. Let people understand that it's not just about being vegan. It's about creating world peace as well. Thank you so much, Dr. Tuttle, for everything that you do to bring awareness in this world. And I know that this is not the last time we will be speaking. So thank you. Okay, everybody, for those of you, we're going to turn off the live stream. Please share this video with everybody you know. We'll see you tomorrow.